afternoon. It's Sunday, November 13th. I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Commemorations marking 21 years since the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin were held across the country today. A short time ago, the official state ceremony at Mount Herzl came to an end. The event was attended by the Rabin family, the Prime Minister, the President, Speaker of the Knesset, the President of the Supreme Court, Knesset members, and friends. Addressing the crowd, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed the assassination is by no doubt a shocking political murder that is denounced by all. Netanyahu said it is the state's obligation to accentuate Rabin's contribution to the state for generations to come. Netanyahu said that his government, like that of Rabin's, extends its hand out to peace and that he remains optimistic that a substantial solution to the conflict can be achieved, especially in light of recent warming of relations with Israel's neighboring Arab countries. The state ceremony will be followed by a special plenary session at the Knesset at 5 p.m. Other observances and events were held in schools and public institutions across the country. The government may hold its first vote today on the so-called arrangements bill that would enable the legalization of the unauthorized Omona outposts in Samaria, an issue that has divided Prime Minister Netanyahu from many of his ministers. IBA's political reporter Kalev Ben-David joins us now with all the details. Kalev?
Thanks, Aryeh. At this morning's cabinet meeting, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced that he will hold a meeting today of coalition party leaders to discuss the arrangements bill in the hope of delaying a vote by the Ministerial Committee for Legislation on the proposed law that could come later this evening. The new law would allow the retroactive legalization of unauthorized settlement outposts, even those such as Omona, built on private Palestinian property, by authorizing the government to seize such land on a lease basis from its owners in return for granting them alternative property and monetary compensation. Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit has said the law, in its present form, is unlikely to survive a legal challenge in the Supreme Court. The Prime Minister has tried to delay a ministerial vote on the bill until the court first decides on his request to postpone by 7 months in order to evacuate Omona by December 25th. Netanyahu told his cabinet that while nobody is more concerned with the settlements than we are, this requires a balanced and responsible approach for the good of the settlements. If ministers do approve the bill today, it would next head to the Knesset for a first reading vote. Education Minister Naftali Bennett, whose Jewish home is sponsoring the bill, met with protesters demonstrating in support of Omona outside the Prime Minister's office and promised them he would continue to fight for the settlement outpost despite any opposition from Netanyahu. The Prime Minister also told the cabinet that in his conversation last week with Donald Trump, the U.S. President-elect expressed the deep support for Israel dating back many years that characterizes both him and the team around him. Netanyahu said they had agreed to meet soon to discuss all key issues relating to the U.S.-Israel relationship. And he cautioned the ministers to avoid speculation in the media about Trump's future policy toward Israel. Earlier, I prepared this report about the reaction in the U.S. to Trump's surprising victory last week and the president-elect's first steps in putting together the next American administration.
Oh dear. Get ready. We're going to go to your questions in just a more. Okay. Clive, is it possible that this arrangements bill will not be passed and that Netanyahu, even though he opposes this, would pass anyway? And also, what is the effect of Trump's election going to be on this whole Omona issue?
All right, it does look like there is a majority in the cabinet against Netanyahu on this because most of the Likud ministers are siding with the Jewish Home Party against him on the Omona arrangements bill. That's why he's been working so hard to try to delay this vote, hoping the Supreme Court at least gives him to the summer to sort this issue out. In regards to Trump's victory, there are those in the government, especially Education Naftali Bennett, who do believe there's a new age that has come where Israel will basically be free, have a free hand in the West Bank to build all the settlements he wants. But again, this legislation on Omona is really a major step. It will allow the government to basically go ahead, take private Palestinian property, build settlements out there. That may be a step too far for the international community, even maybe a Trump government. We don't know yet.
Kalev, you prepared a report about the Trump's victory. We hope to get back to it. We had some technical issues, but what are you hearing about the possible appointments that Trump is going to be making, especially when it comes to the Middle East?
Well, that is good news for Prime Minister Netanyahu, because especially the two names we keep hearing for Secretary of State are House Speaker Newt Gingrich and the former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. And both of them, especially John Bolton, have been really strong supporters of Israel, and including policies of past Likud governments. If that really comes to pass, the whole era of the State Department criticizing Israel over settlement activity in the West Bank at Jerusalem, that's probably gone. So that certainly would be good news. The question is what kind of attitude Donald Trump will take. That we still don't know.
Well, he said over the weekend that he wants to make the ultimate deal in the peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. Is he serious?
That's the big question, Arya. He says these things off the cuff. Who knows if he really wants to go ahead and try to get involved in this. He's going to be so busy with domestic issues. It's hard to imagine him taking a hands-on approach the way Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton tried to approach this issue, or to press for it like Barack Obama. But you never know. Certainly, Donald Trump, maybe he would like to have a Nobel Prize for peace, like some of his predecessors, and especially in the last years of his administration, it may be a temptation that, like other presidents, he can't resist.
Or maybe they'll rename Mona the Malay Trump.
You never know.
You never know. We have your special packages ready now. We're going to have it, please.
In the days following the U.S. presidential election, much of America is still trying to come to grips with the prospect of Donald Trump occupying the White House for the next 4 years. Protests against Trump broke out in several American cities, including Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and violent demonstrations in Portland, Oregon, where a protester was wounded by gunfire in a drive-by shooting. Continual demonstrations are taking place outside the Trump Tower on New York's Fifth Avenue. Even while inside the building, the president-elect is meeting with family members and close advisors, trying to fill out the key positions of his administration before taking office on January 20th.
I have no expectation. All I do is give my advice. Donald's been my friend for 28 years. All of my work on behalf of him has been out of great loyalty and friendship to him. I can see already how he is going to be a great president.
Over the weekend, Trump shook up his transition team, putting Vice President-elect Mike Pence in charge in place of New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Perhaps a sign he will be drawing more on experienced members of the Republican Party establishment for key roles in his administration, rather than political outsiders such as himself. In his first interview since winning the election, Trump appeared to be backing away from some of the more extreme rhetoric of his campaign, telling the Wall Street Journal he is considering keeping some key elements of Obamacare in place, rather than scrapping it entirely. Trump also said he would be interested in working toward a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians for the sake of humanity, describing it as the ultimate deal, the deal that can't be made. What policies the president-elect will actually pursue in the Middle East and elsewhere, including at home, still remain a mystery for much of the world and for many nervous Americans as well.
In other news, the Prime Minister's wife, Sara Netanyahu, has phoned incoming U.S. First Lady Melania Trump to congratulate her on her husband's victory. The Prime Minister's bureau said the conversation was warm and heartfelt. Trump was quoted saying that she and President-elect Donald Trump were looking forward to hosting the Netanyahus in Washington at the first opportunity. The American First Lady-to-be predicted that relations between Israel and the U.S. and between the two families will be equally wonderful. The family of Aron Shaul, a soldier killed during Operation Protective Edge in Gaza in 2014, lodged an appeal with the High Court of Justice today against the government's delay over establishing a ministerial committee to deal with the return of his body, as well as that of IDF officer Hadar Golden, who was also killed in the same operation. Their remains are being held by Hamas. In June, the cabinet approved the establishment of such a committee, but have yet to appoint one. The families of both soldiers have constantly urged the government to pressure the Hamas terror group to release the soldiers' bodies. So far, to no avail. 2 months ago, Aron Shaul's father passed away following a battle with cancer. Palestinian police removed 6 ultra-Orthodox Israeli citizens who entered the holy site of Joseph's tomb in the West Bank city of Nablus early this morning. PA security forces handed the group over to Israeli forces. The Israelis traveled to Nablus without coordinating their visit in advance. The men, all residents of Jerusalem, were questioned by police for endangering their lives and the lives of IDF soldiers. They were released and ordered to refrain from visiting the tomb for 10 days. Meanwhile, overnight in Bethlehem, police escorted thousands of worshippers to the holy site of Rachel's tomb. Another 200 religious Jews were guarded by security forces as they visited the Alon Marmeh site in Hebron. The army said both of those visits went without incident. The protest march headed by social activist Vicky Knafo today arrived at the Knesset following a week of walking. Some 24 marchers, which included handicapped and financially disadvantaged activists, are demanding that the 2-year budget be amended in order to better facilitate the needs of the financially strapped population. The protesters are calling on the government to revise the budget and allocate more resources to improve education, health care, and welfare. Following a series of meetings with Knesset members, the group will head off to the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem, where marchers will set up a protest tent. An agreement between Israel and China has introduced a 10-year multiple entry visa for Chinese tourists and businessmen. The agreement, which went into effect Friday, is aimed at boosting cooperation between the two countries and enables visitors to stay up to 90 days at a time. Israel is the 3rd country to grant Chinese citizens multiple entry visas following the United States and Canada. China has the fastest growing tourism in the world, and there is a steady increase of Chinese tourists who visit the Jewish state.
China is the first country that Israel has this kind of agreement with. We don't have such agreement on a reciprocal basis with any country.
France today marked the first anniversary of the series of brutal terror attacks that claimed the lives of 130 people. Prime Minister Manuel Valls said that the state of emergency imposed on the country following last year's deadly attacks is likely to be extended. More in this report from IBA's Margot Dudkevich.
Thousands participated in a series of memorial events in the French capital, with President François Hollande unveiling plaques commemorating the victims. The first event took place at the National Stadium, where 3 Islamic Jihad suicide bombers detonated explosives outside the venue during an international football match, killing 1 person. Other plaques were unveiled outside 6 cafes that were targeted by a 3-man commando unit who fired more than 400 shots in approximately 10 minutes, murdering 39 people enjoying a night out. The final ceremony was held at the Bataclan Concert Hall, where 90 people attending a rock gig were murdered by gun-toting terrorists. The memorial events began last night, with rock star Sting appearing at the Paris Concert Hall that opened its doors for the first time since last November. Before holding a minute's silence for the 130 people who lost their lives in the Paris attacks, Sting addressed the crowd in French.
Ce soir, nous avons deux tâches importantes à concilier.
Saying while those who lost their lives must be honored and remembered, it is also important to celebrate life and music at the historic venue. Since last year's deadly attacks, the country has been placed under a constant state of emergency that has been continuously extended, enabling police to conduct raids on suspects' houses and place people under house arrest. The situation has brought the country's 5 million-strong Muslim population under scrutiny, since all the jihadist attackers were Muslim, acting in the name of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. While the fight against terror has been a mainstay of President François Hollande's administration, the authorities have to reckon with an estimated 900 French citizens fighting with the Islamic State abroad. Many, after undergoing military training, are sent back to Europe to set up sleeper cells in preparation for attacks. French authorities estimate some 15,000 people residing in France are in the process of becoming radicalized. 1 year on, 20 survivors injured in last year's attacks remain in hospital. In 6 months' time, the country will hold presidential elections, with the latest opinion polls showing that a third of the electorate believes hardliner Marine Le Pen, leader of the right-wing National Front, will make the country a safer place. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
President Reuven Rivlin expressed condolences on behalf of the State of Israel over the death of legendary singer Leonard Cohen, who passed away last week at the age of 82. Rivlin hailed the Jewish musician and acclaimed poet for his vast career, which spanned over five decades, and said that he had accompanied the State of Israel during both times of war and growth. The Israeli president stressed that Cohen never thought to change his clearly Jewish name in order to become more popular. News that Cohen had passed away first broke out Thursday night, and while few details of his death have been disclosed, it was later revealed that he actually died last Monday night in his home in Los Angeles. According to the rabbi and cantor of Montreal's congregation Sha'ar HaShamayim in Canada, where he was laid to rest, Cohen's wish was to be buried in a traditional Jewish rite in a family plot, besides his parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Cohen's last performance in Israel was 7 years ago. Back in 1973, he performed in front of troops in the Sinai during the Yom Kippur War. It's Sunday, and keeping with our weekly tradition, here are 5 more good news stories to kick off the new week. Israeli judokas won 3 medals, including 2 silver and 1 bronze, at the under 23-year-old European Championship that took place in Tel Aviv over the weekend. Israel's Delek Group wins exploration tender offshore Canada. Together with a small private Israeli operator, Navitas Petroleum, the partners will invest some $36 million in the project. Israel's Meir Brand has been appointed vice president of Google. Brand, who has been the director of Google Israel since 2005, was chosen for the top job in the giant global tech firm. The Royal Bank of Scotland is getting ready to hold a hackathon in Tel Aviv this week, scouting for Israeli financial technologies that will enable the Edinburgh-based retail bank to boost its services to customers. And finally, for all you stamp lovers, the 2016 International Stamp Exhibition kicks off tonight at the International Convention Center in Jerusalem. The 5-day event will feature nearly 80 exhibitors from around the world who will be showing off their valuable collections. Stock Talk now, and share starters off the week in a plus column. There was no foreign currency trading today, and here are the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather and nature, and be prepared for the supermoon tonight. The nearly full moon is the closest it's been to Earth in nearly 70 years and will appear 14% larger and 30% brighter. And if you miss it tonight, you can see it again tomorrow, the supermoon. The forecast is for partly cloudy skies with a further drop in temperatures, mainly in the hilly regions. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That's our broadcast for today. Tune in again tomorrow when Elon Aslan Levy will be here to bring you the latest news from Israel. I'm Ariel O'Sullivan, wishing you a good